We're here to talk about the 11th book I read this year, and that book was Up From Slavery, the autobiography of Booker T. Washington. To be, in the sake of full disclosure, I did not really know a lot about Booker T. Washington before I read this book, which was one of the reasons I decided to read his autobiography, because I knew he was a famous figure in the world, the African American community and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't know a lot about him. So that's why I decided to read this book. This book was written by him. You know, he was responsible for starting Tuskegee University, what is now Tuskegee University. When he started, it was just the Tuskegee Institute. He was the founder and the first principal of that university. And he did a lot from getting that university off the ground. His first students actually built the university from the ground up. When he first came to the university, there was nothing. He actually started everything from building the land, building buildings to purchasing land. And in this autobiography, he really talks about a lot about what it took to get Tuskegee off the ground. Very fascinating to go from nothing, just the idea of starting a university, to growing into actually one of the top universities for African Americans. You learn a lot about him as to come from slavery, after emancipation, to be freed, then trying to learn how to read and write, and going from just literally going from a slave to being a president and founder of a university, one of the top speakers in the country. Traveled all over the world, all over the United States, promoting Tuskegee, went across Europe, spoke before kings and queens, and just was an amazing figure. And one thing I did not know a lot about him was that even though he was this great public figure, there were still people that didn't like him. Could have been partly because of his popularity, but a lot of people felt like he downplayed the severity of the race relations in the South. They felt like he kind of made it seem like there was nothing going on. There was no racism. Everyone got along. Everything was great. Blacks and white worked together for the greater good of Tuskegee. There were a lot of critics. He had to go up against black critics and white critics that felt, like I said, he downplayed the race. But ultimately, he prevailed. Was a great man, and is known in history years after his death as one of the great figures in the African American community. And like I said, this was his personal autobiography. Only thing about it, I wish it had a talked a little bit more about his family, and his stuff like that, because he was married like 3 times. He had kids, but he kind of glazed over that. And it could have been just during those times, people didn't really talk a lot about personal stuff. This could be just I'm living in the 21st century and reality shows, so I guess I like to hear the family, the background, the gossip, and all that kind of stuff that you read a lot in today's autobiographies. But he focused a lot more on his work and his accomplishments. But after reading this, I regained a newfound respect for him, learned a lot about him. So if you're looking to get any knowledge on Booker T. Washington, this would be the first book I would pick up. That was Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And that was the 11th book I read this year. 11 of 52. We're on a good pace. We're keeping track. We're doing the videos, and thank you guys for really hanging in there with me. I'm not really giving in-depth summaries. This is, like I said, this is my vlog. I just like to keep a video diary of what I read this year, so I can go back, because I found when I keep track and when I put things out there, it pushes me to get things done. So this is the main purpose of this. As we go on, hopefully I'll get better at giving summaries and maybe giving more discussions as more people catch on and be encouraged. But anyway, I'm rambling. That was the 11th book I read this year, Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. Join me next week where we're discussing the 12th book I read. Thanks, and you guys have a blessed day. Peace.